Greetings! Welcome to the devlog for update 39 of Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, we've got a number of special things. We got some new toys and two long-awaited big systemic updates for the game. So let's start with the toys. First off, we have a full suite, a collection of Rhino Revolvers. I don't know if you have ever seen these. Truth be told, when I first saw these a number of years back, I wasn't a fan of them aesthetically, but the process of implementing them and playing with them has made them absolutely grow on me. There's some unusual things about the design beyond the sort of cool shaping here, which is that, unlike most revolvers that fire from the sort of top chamber of the cylinder, this one fires from the bottom one. We can see the barrel is right there. In addition to that, the hammer, quote-unquote, on the back here isn't actually the hammer. The hammer for the weapon is internal. This is merely a cocking lever. So you'll see as I click down on the touchpad, it'll come back, and then it will snap back forward because the hammer has been cocked internally. So in terms of what we have for the suite, this is the Rhino 60, 50, 40, and 20 DS. This is the little, like, concealed carry size one. I absolutely love its little dimensions here. We've got a matching Speedloader for it. These are all chambered in 357. So we got a 6-shot 357 Speedloader. This one I've been doing a little bit of tweaks involving sort of loading reliability with the Speedloaders. I'd love it if you folks could try this one out, see if it works a little bit better for you than the others. Snap that shot shut. So you'll notice that didn't kick a whole ton, and one of the reasons is because of the fact that the barrel being closer to sort of the trigger makes a sort of special feature of the Rhinos that has way less muzzle flip than other 357 revolvers. On top of that, we now have two-hand stabilization with revolvers the way we do with handguns. And that basically if you have a hand that's empty or is holding a magazine or a flashlight and have it braced close to the hand holding the firearm, you will get way less muzzle flip. So this has been the case with handguns for a while, but I now just finally added it to the revolvers. Notice how that kicks way more when I just have one hand out like that. So yeah, so what are the differences here? The big ones are these all have slightly different sort of recoil patterns and recovery times relating to both their weight and barrel length. And in addition to that, the 40 and the 50 here have an undermounted rail, and the 60 has a rail on the underside and the top. So if you want a nice, magnified sniping revolver, this one is for you. Cool. So along that lines, actually, because I mentioned the flashlight earlier, I did want to mention one little fun change that I did, is that the tactical flashlight here now has an alternate pose. So you can basically, I'm holding the controller pointing forward now. If I click the trigger, it basically lines the flashlight up inverted with the controller, so I can have myself in a detective stance here. This was requested a while back, but I just got around to it now. Wonderful. Check that. Next up on the toys list, we have another firearm that's been requested by a number of folk and is a personal favorite, which is the SIG 552 Carbine. Let's spawn lock that mag. We have a 20 round mag of 5.56. Bolt handle here. This is safe, semi, burst, and full. Oh, we're getting... Well, that was a weird little error there. And we're back. The Unity editor can be a little temperamental at some point, and I've been running into a little editor-only error. Don't worry, it doesn't actually affect the build of the game. It relates to physics. Totally lags me out when it happens. But anywho, we are back in action. So as I was shown before, we got some single fire. We've got some 3-round burst. course, we chew through quite quickly with the 20-round box here, and we can also do the AK-style tactical reload, where we jam a mag up here to knock the other one out, bolt back, full auto. Come on. Ugh. I am terrible at this. Try it again. Boom. There we go. Wonderful. So now that we have taken a look at the 5.5.2 here, let's take a look at our big system updates for this update. The first one relates to the item spawner and a very, very long requested feature, which thankfully we, as of update 40 here, we now have, which is the vault, namely the ability for you to save a configured firearm and retrieve it. So an example here, I was just playing around with the Mark 17. I can just click this and look at that, already configured, attachments and everything. Please note that when this does spawn them, it is still spawning them as though the individual components were just spawned. So things like, say, rails or sort of flip-up sights may need to be flipped back down from their default position. But yeah. So we got our optics all ready to go, including whatever magazine you load in this. So as an example, if I take that out and I pop a drum in here, I can now place this on the plinth. Please only have one thing on the plinth at once. Hit scan. Boom. And as you can see here, it's now been scanned in, and we can see that it has the drum magazine and not the box mag. If we no longer wanted this version of it, we could just go here and delete that entry. This is especially really convenient if you, say, have, modded up a handgun and want to sort of run one in each hand. Boop, boop. Beautiful. 2 Rhino 60s with our reflex lasers and our laser pointers. So yeah, so that is now in here, and as I said, it's as easy as can be. Just jump over to Vault if you want to save something. You can just let's do a fresh one, just as an example. So let's grab a, I don't know, let's grab a UMP. Let's go ahead and put our optic on it, throw our box mag on it, and then our suppressor on it. Like so. Pop that down on the plinth, go back to the main menu, vault, scan, boom, and it's in there for later use. So sorry this took so long to get working for your folks. This was actually a far more complex feature to implement than the simple menu interface makes it look like. I had to completely rebuild my object database system, and including manually filling out several hundred entries that made me want to shoot myself. So, but it's done and it's working. So I hope you get plenty of use and enjoyment out of it. Throw this over here, and now the second and final thing. This is for both for front-facing users and for those of you who have sort of accessibility issues, such as being in a wheelchair or just having to play primarily sitting down, which is a modification to the advanced teleport options. If we jump into our movement options, teleport to point, teleport advanced options, we now have a front-facing mode. Now, I played around with a whole bunch of different approaches to this, as well as talked with a bunch of different VR devs. Obviously, it's front-facing teleport is where rotation is involved, is always a little bit difficult because there's this issue of disorientation. But I've come with what I think is the most sort of universal cross-platform option, which is fairly simple, which is that when we teleport, it's now a 2-stage teleport. We click the menu button, looking at a point. We can see that the teleport rig always initially points in the direction of rig forward. So if you're a front-facing user and trying to reorient yourself prior to the teleport, just line yourself up with this rig. And then when you release the menu button, nothing happens except the rig just stays here. And then when we click again, basically we point the rig towards another point, essentially where our new forward is going to be. So if I pointed it over here, when I release, I'm now facing that direction. So those of you who are in front-facing setups, please give this a shot. Tell me what you think. In my own practicing, I found that I could get almost up to the sort of regular speed of sort of single-phase teleporting. It does require a little more attention, so it isn't necessarily the best thing for super, super fast-paced context, but for everything else, I find it gives you a lot of sort of precise control to get your alignment exactly where you want it. You can point it even straight down and then in a given direction just to reorient yourself. So give that a shot. Let me know what you think. It is after a bunch of sort of failed abortive attempts getting something I liked, it has thus far turned out to be the best option that I've played with. So anywho, that is it for the new toys and the new systems. Let's go ahead and jump out of VR and talk about the rest of the changelog and what's coming next.
Yo! Let's take a look at the rest of the changelog here. So let's see, we've got some other changes to the attachment system came along with the functionality of the vault in the item spawner. For one, rail adapters that currently have something attached to them can no longer be unmounted. So if you attach, say, a handgun rail adapter to a handgun and then a scope on it, or even a riser and then a scope, you have to take the attachments off effectively in the sort of reverse hierarchical order. And this is because of some corner cases. I know some of you who've played with like really insane aggregates for firearms have noticed that they can be a little crashy, and part of the reason for that was if you happened to take a base piece in a complex hierarchy off, some data didn't get passed around correctly. It's such a complex situation because of the way that, well, just to give you a bit more background about the way attachments work in H3 and why it's taken so long for the vault to happen, and why this is so complex of a system, is that in most video games, when you have, say, a firearm with a bunch of attachments on it, those are, in most cases, sort of pre-saved configurations, and very little of import changes about the firearm as an asset in that game. It might look different, obviously, and sort of give you a different sort of zooming in behavior, or it might change something about the sort of firearm's data. But in terms of the scene graph structure of the firearm in the game engine, not a ton has really changed. Whereas in H3, an attachment is a physical object the way anything else is. It has its own physics hierarchy. It has all of these different sorts of utility nodes in it. And for various sorts of functionality, like being able to put something in a quick belt slot, in which case it sort of becomes non-physical, and a bunch of other functionality. When you attach an attachment to a firearm in H3, a whole bunch of stuff gets passed around, like rigid body components get destroyed, but their data gets saved. I move physics primitives around in the hierarchy for performance reasons and just so that things behave as you expect them to, which means that there's a ton of points of failure. And in the case of the vault actually sort of reassembling a firearm you've saved, it's actually, you may notice when you spawn something like that, you hear this very loud attach click. And the reason for that is that the system is literally assembling the firearm as though the player was assembling it, sort of, but even going so far as to sort of pass in fake hands, so that certain data is present in terms of like positioning reversible components and things like that. So it took a while to get working correctly, but it's there now. So I hope you all enjoy it. I made some other internal sort of optimizations related to the way that hierarchy is manipulated when you attach things. So for complex weapons, it should be a little more performant. It's always going to be really heavy if you put like, 10 attachments on a firearm. There's just so many objects in that hierarchy. But it should be better now. Let's see. You might have noticed on the Mark 17, it now has a forward sort of rail extension. on it. This was actually modeled by the modeler of the firearm, Nicholas, originally, and I just completely derped and forgot to... I imported the mesh and the textures and everything, and just forgot to slap it on the firearm. So it looks even longer and meaner now. So yeah, let's see, I talked about the flashlight and the recoil dampening, so we're all set. Removals. This is the first time I've actually had to have this section in a changelog. I have removed one thing from the game. I hope you aren't too frustrated with me, which is that I've removed ammo boxes for now, and for a very important reason. For one, they were really resource wasteful in that basically I had a unique texture per box per round type, which begins to add up. And they were authored when there was maybe 20% of the number of cartridges that now exist in the game. And then on top of that, because of the way that I assembled all of them by hand, including putting all the little cartridges in there, they weren't batched together well. They were just separate objects because I didn't do it in a modeling application. And so they were inefficient to draw. You might have noticed this if you've ever put like 20 ammo boxes up and turned towards them. You might get some judder because they're actually unnecessarily complex. So for now, I've just straight up removed them because I had to I basically migrated every object in the game over to this new database, and because I plan to change these eventually, I didn't take the time to migrate the dozens of ammo boxes over by hand as well. So they're gone, but at some point in the future, I would like to make a more elegant and interesting solution that is somewhere in between the way an ammo box worked and the way that the current sort of ammo spawning panel works. Neither of those are sort of ideal situations or ideal solutions to the problem of I want to spawn ammunition of the type that I want in the game in a way that's sort of physical and neat, but easy to access exactly the cartridge type I need. So I'm still thinking on that, but when I have an elegant solution of that type, it'll be back in and will likely replace or augment the ammo spawning panel in some manner. Let's see, fixes. Oh, the sparkler, was never showing up in the fireworks section of the item spawner, so that's been fixed. The FAMAS F1 was reclassified as an assault rifle. I accidentally had that in the carbine section, but that actually is a full-length barrel, so it should be an assault rifle, not a carbine. Brass impact and ejection sounds for 5.56 rounds were missing. Weirdly, they were the only rounds that were missing audio sources, so that was fixed. And I fixed that, that irritating bug where you'd cock the hammer on a revolver, put it in a quick belt slot, and then you'd pick the revolver out and it would discharge the moment you started to release the trigger. That has been fixed. It basically had to... The problem with that related to when you have a controller like the Vive controller, you have these sets of events on trigger down, on trigger up, etc. With the Vive controller triggers, trigger down occurs when you basically click that button in, which is the trigger going from about 0.7 to 1 on that axis, and then the trigger up event occurs basically immediately upon release. So at 1 point, it reads as being 1.0 at the moment of that. And so my sort of like faux discharge mitigation code that was working on all other firearms wasn't working on the revolver because of some weird override I was doing of trigger behavior to handle the fact that on a double action revolver, if you cock the hammer, you have a hair trigger from there, and that's actually represented inside the code. But the thresholds were basically too close, and that was what was causing it. So I fixed that, and it should actually make that function better for a number of other objects as well. And lastly, I fixed the invisible dynamite issue for those of you running on lower quality settings. It was an LOD thing where it was like culling the dynamite when it got so small on the screen, which, because it was a small object, meant it was getting culled most of the time, unless you were running up on sort of high quality. So you should no longer have invisible dynamite, which sounds like just about the only way to make dynamite more dangerous. So... excellent. So that is the whole changelog. In terms of what is coming up next, I've got a whole bunch more toys that I'm working on. I'm also going to be, I'm going to say that the updates over the next month or so are going to be a little lighter in some respects, in that I'm doing some longer term work on what's going to be the 4th of July update. So we got to get that one right, considering what kind of game this is. So, but more toys, as I said. There's a couple other systems that I'm laying the groundwork for improving, especially in relationship to sound, but that's something that's not going to bear fruit, I think, for a number of months. So I'm just going to be cranking away on that. So to sort of summarize what the next couple updates, other than the holiday, are going to be, is going to be fun little content drops here and there, little system tweaks, while I'm working on the sort of ugly underside of things, preparing for the eventuality of rebuilding most of the sound in the game, which is going to be a harrowing experience. And at some point upgrading to Unity 5.6 if they can manage to push a stable version of 5.6 for VR stuff. Anyway, so grouse. So, well, I will leave you to enjoy and play with this update. Let me know what you think of it, and I will see you next week. Peace.